hope everyone's in the right room. This morning we're going to be talking about Ning, do-it-yourself, building a social network from scratch. This is my first time out here at Cali. I'm Mike Wagner from the Hofstra Law School. I work for the IT department as the webmaster. And this is my first time presenting, so I have my little remote, Mac laptop. I'm hoping it all goes flawlessly. But bear with me if there are any technical glitches. So Ning, first I just want to give a little bit of a background of how we came to even think about doing social networking and how we came about with the idea of using Ning. Wikipedia has this neat, pretty bland definition for a social network, referring how it focuses on building online communities of people who share interests and or activities. So it kind of sounds a little plain when it's said that way. The quote that I like is a marketing person, Marta Kagan. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. I don't know if she originated that quote, but that's where I first saw it. And she has a wonderful website, bonafidemarketinggenius.com. Has a really witty presentation about social media, a little bit colorful, but it really has a lot of excellent points. And this idea of it's a dialogue and not a monologue. I think up until now, our web presence has largely been a monologue. We're basically just presenting information outward. We're letting people know about events. We're, again, just presenting the information in an outward face, and there's not much of an opportunity for the community, the students, to contribute in the reverse direction. So in order to create a dialogue, we began thinking about using a social network. Our goal seemed pretty simple, to build a social network for our current students and to go live by fall of 2009. For us, our semester begins August 15th. And we wanted to focus primarily right now on our current student body. And so it's a pretty simple goal. Of course, that's how all IT things begin. They all sound simple. And so where do we begin? A little bit of a quick background and overview. Our current web platform, we're using Hannon Hill's Cascade. It's our content management system. Works great. For our portal, Main Campus maintains it, and it's the uPortal architecture. But unfortunately, neither of those platforms had a simple way of integrating social networking into them. uPortal, for example, can be customized by a lot of hand coding to do social networking, but it's not something that's plug and play by any means. So our goal of going live by this fall definitely dictated some of our decision making. Okay. As far as Web 2.0 tools, Gary Moore is going to be presenting later on about live stream, which used to be Mogulus. We use it for live webcasting. And we're also using a number of other tools. We use V2 Evolution for our blogs. I heard a comment earlier in the conference yesterday about how a lot of schools don't like to host blogs on the university server just in case something questionable gets said. So we use Bluehost, external hosting solution. It's worked very well for us. We do have several departments and areas that have a presence on Facebook. We are using Flickr, again, live stream for the webcasting. And then we're also actively posting on YouTube. We actually developed our own in-house video production department this year, which is pretty exciting. Sounds impressive, but in actuality, we have a handful of very talented undergraduates that are film majors. That it's amazing what they can do. You give them a little bit of space and a little bit of direction, and they really pull it together. And then on the web end, we also benefit from a really excellent group of student assistants. In terms of social networking platforms, we looked at 4 main platforms. I did the primary research. eCrowds. Has anyone heard of eCrowds? I'm just curious. Okay, that's a product by Hannon Hill. It's a hosted solution. I tried it out. I thought it was interesting. Facebook. Has anyone heard of Facebook? Okay, that's definitely the big product. Ning. And then there's a 4th product we looked at briefly. I looked into Social Engine. It's PHP based. It's fully open sourced. It requires customization. And for us, it would require us to have a PHP server, which we don't have our own machine room. So that was definitely a hiccup. time has come, you must choose. At some point, if you want to build a social network, you have to commit to a platform. And so we gave it a lot of thought. We ended up coming up with, we're going to choose Ning. And really three basic reasons, as I was putting together this presentation, is Ning allows us to do all the work in-house. We don't have to outsource. We don't have to request development resources from our main campus web development group. They're outstanding with what they help us with. But for Ning, we wanted to see if we could do it all in-house. Ning, of all the social networking products I've used, including Facebook, is by far the easiest to use, both as myself as the developer, and then also I've been amazed at our administrators that are using it now. It's very intuitive, very simple, and very easy to use. And lastly, which I'll explain a little more about later in the presentation, it's fully customizable in terms of template, branding. It's pretty amazing what we can do. It's all CSS based. Did anyone attend the data about homepage designs yesterday? Yeah. So that whole idea of being able to take the Duke homepage and make a few changes to the CSS and it changes the entire layout. That's how Ning is architected. Facebook is fairly rigid as far as what you can do. You can do your own artwork in the upper right corner. There's a couple other modifications you can make to it, but it's definitely far more rigid in terms of layout. And then, of course, I think Facebook may have made a change back, was it March, where they started shifting things around all of a sudden, and they seem to do that periodically, which for us as an IT department could be challenging. Interesting statistic. There are over 850,000 social networks on Ning, growing at the rate of over 3,000 each day, and that's in February of 2009. And just in January of this year, over 100,000 new social networks were added to Ning. It's not a weird little boutique product. It's a heavily used product, and it's definitely growing. And again, that factored into our decision making. This is an interesting quote. This is just from this past May on CNN. They're referring to Facebook and MySpace being used to connect people, family, and friends. But Ning is taking a different approach. They're focused on gathering people around a common interest. So for our goal, again, create a social network for our current students. So it's a very specific goal, very specific group, and Ning is by far, out of everything I looked at, was ideal, and as did our IT department, our communications department. Everyone really fell in love with Ning. So how hard is it to set up? Kind of a good question. Give a little bit of history for myself real quick. Graphic design major as an undergraduate, art history minor. Come from a heavy design standpoint. I worked in publications originally at Hofstra, went to web development, interactive media, and back in '06 moved over to the law school. So I have a heavy design background. I'm not what I would consider a technical whiz. I'm kind of one of those, I'll figure it out if you give me the time, and I've managed to figure it out, but I'm not a hardcore programmer. So I'm sure there's probably folks in the room that would classify themselves as hardcore programmers. I'm definitely not that. So when it comes to how hard is it to set up, I think this is really gets pretty interesting. The first step is to set up a Ning account. And just explain the overview, and I'm actually going to go on ning.com and just go through the process. And this whole idea of do it yourself, we'll actually do it during the session. Ning is very much a Web 2.0 site. You get to the home page, very big button to sign up. Their logo is nice and big. It's pretty simple. And then we go to sign up for an account. It's basic name, password, very straightforward. And then right away, the next step they get to is they let you create your own social network. There's nothing complicated about it. It's a little bit different than the Facebook process, for example. In terms of creating your own social network, you just give it a name, pick a web address, as long as it's not being used previously. That's the first step. And then you go right into customizing the social network. And I'm just going to go through this quickly. But again, we're going to take a look at the actual Ning site in a moment. It allows you to put in some basic information. One thing that's interesting is you can do a public site that's open for anyone to see. or in our case, we want to do a private site so that it's a walled garden, I think was the phrase I heard yesterday. I kind of like that phrase. There's always this worry about social networking of, well, what if the students say something that's not good for the school, or that isn't appropriate? And if it's a walled garden, it's just our current student population seeing it. And beyond that, just again, this very basic preliminary stuff. And what I like about this is, for me, I'm just filling out some boxes. Very much a Web 2.0 setup. Features, once we bring up Ning, you'll see pretty much how easy this is to use. It's all drag and drop. You can drag anything from the left column over to the right layout area. You can move things around. After I built the initial Ning site, our person who oversees our communications area, Jeffrey Dodge, he logged on and he's able to move parts around. He just thought it was the best thing ever. And Jeff isn't a high-end technical person, and he definitely found it very easy to use. And that was great. It allowed us to decentralize right from the get-go. And then, beyond features, there's a whole slew of templates that you can choose from to start off with. In the upper right, there's little arrows you could go through, and there's, I don't know, I guess somewhere around 40 different templates that are standard to begin with. And then below that, you can customize everything from background color to background image. And again, it's all pretty straightforward. For the slightly more sophisticated folks, they can actually go right in and customize the CSS and really get pretty radical with your changes. So just about any layout that you can imagine, you can accomplish with Ning. And I think this is a real big differentiator from the whole Facebook mentality of everyone must fit our one standardized mold. And that mold may change at any point without us letting you know in advance. Ning is a walled garden, and it's an environment that you can fully customize. And so, seriously, is it that easy? And what I'd like to do now is see if I can manage to switch over to the browser and go to ning.com. And if anyone's interested in following along on your computer, definitely check it out. And we're going to start off at ning.com. And this should be interesting. Okay. So, when you get to the home page, again, same thing we saw before. If you want to sign up, you can sign up. I definitely would encourage you just to try it if you'd like to. And once you click sign up, you get that form. Or for myself, I'm just going to press sign in since I already have an account. Okay. And see if I'm lucky and remember my username and password. Definitely one of the challenges about all the different Web 2.0 tools is keeping track of the slew of passwords. And for myself, since I already have an account, on the right side of my screen, there's a link for create your own social network. For any of you that are creating a new account, you'll get that secondary screen where it asks you to create your own social network. So I already have one built, which I'll show in a little bit. But in terms of creating a new one, is it that easy? Let's see. Okay, so we could name our social network. I'm just going to call it Hofstra Law School. Oops. For someone who uses a computer every day, I'm a horrible typer. So, and I'm just going to add a couple of numbers at the end because we already used that Hofstra Law School as a prefix for our other section. And after you give it a name and you put in a web address, click create. And when I first tried Ning, I was really wondering, is the hype really worth it? Is it really going to be easy to do? And it actually is. Once you create it, you get this secondary form, and you just go through it step by step. I started off with keeping our site public just so other folks in the law school could see it, but now it's private, so you can go either way. If your school has a tagline, in our case, we we're using Hofstra Law School's social network, something to that effect. Okay. We give a description, put in keywords. The description is limited to 140 characters, very much like Twitter. Keywords limited to 200. In terms of country, select the United States and our zip code. In our case, it's 11549 and pulls up the city and state. And then once you get to the features section, this, as I mentioned before, is literally all drag and drop. There's no calling the web development department or asking a webmaster for, can we add this widget? It's just literally as easy as clicking and dragging. So if I wanted to move the photos over to the right column, just move it right over. If I wanted to add a blog to the center column, okay, add a blog. And then there's a button over here on the left side about view all features. So there's a couple of additional features that can be added. RSS feeds, for example, are really super easy to add. So we're going to place that at the bottom of the center column. And if you wanted to remove anything, if you didn't want to have videos for some reason, or if you didn't want to show activity, you can simply drag it over to the left. And this took me a moment to figure out, but to remove the feature. And if you click OK, it puts it back in the left-hand column. So I think in terms of interface design, I think Ning did a pretty good job. These are all the standard widgets that can be added, and it can move around in any configuration. Also, since this is the first time presenting, if I'm going a little too quick, or if you have any questions, just raise a hand, call it out. Be glad to stop at any point. And then once you get your features figured out, you can always go back in and customize this later. If you click on Next, you can pick one of a slew of starting templates. And for us, we picked one and then customized it, which I'll explain a little more about. But for now, the social blue one looks neat, so I'll click on that. And then on this page, if you scroll further down, you could change the colors. So you could use your own school colors. You could add a background image, watermark, and so on. And then there's additional options, like adding a header image to do some branding, which I think is good to do. And all different ways you can customize it in terms of font. And again, there's no doing weird things on the back end. It's all right here. Very easy to see, very easy to do. Where I would say it gets a little bit complicated is if you go to the Advanced tab, it actually gives you just open access to the style sheet. And you can literally go to town. You can just do anything you can imagine in terms of layout. I found some minor challenges with using the style sheet, but some of it's just trial and error, to be honest. But it's great that it's all open source as far as allowing you to take a beginning template and then customize it fully to match whatever you want to do in terms of layout. And then there's this really neat button, Launch. So let's see what happens when I click Launch. Basically, it builds the site for me, and now, poof, do it yourself. Have your own social network. Once you get to this stage, from here, it's just a matter of deciding what you want to customize and so on. So they have a neat tool that comes up first where you could invite members if you wanted to invite members right away. If you had other people in your department or in your school, you want to get their feedback and collaborate on it. Okay, so you could invite members, and if we click on that, we can kind of see how that works. I never like doing this, importing your whole address book. It always kind of worries me. I don't know about you guys. Actually got an email from my brother recently about something about handmade purses from India that he was selling. I'm like, this does not look right. So I think someone somewhere along the way got his entire address book. He works for Oracle too, so he had no excuse. But you can also import a CSV file down here at the bottom. So if you do want to do a bulk invitation, it makes it very easy to do. And I think it's another plus with using Ning. I could enter the email addresses individually and so on. So beyond that, if we go back, customizing the appearance, that brings us back to the basic appearance screen. So if you realize you want to make another change, you can always go back in and change it. And again, it's all, what you see is what you get. In this case, I want to change the text color and make it funky looking green. Do that and click Save. And then that would change it for us. Go back again. Okay. And then adding content. Gives you all the different choices as far as blog post, video, event, photos, and so on. And for our case, we want to do a blog post. It's a very simple format, standardized blogging. Give it a title. Get my wonderful typing skills. Since I'm not the fastest typer, I'm going to keep it simple. And you can also, as you're building out your network, you can decide who to post your blog post to everyone, to just your friends, to just yourself. That's down here. You could delay when you actually post it. So if someone at your school wanted to do an event posting on the social network and wanted to go live on Monday, they could set it to go live on Monday. And I think that's, again, it's nice, easy to use, already built in, doesn't require any kind of weird customizations. And if you want to publish the post, publish it. Okay. And if we go back out to the main page, we get rid of our little helper box. You can see the blog post is right up there in the center column. So in terms of adding content, it's pretty simple. Again, when I first saw, okay, we're going to build a social network, I thought, oh, it's going to be another one of those projects where I'm going to endlessly get requests to do updates, make modifications. Part of our main website at the law school, a lot of the content updates are still centralized. We have several departments that are doing their own updates. But I didn't want to necessarily add a whole nother website into the mix where I'd have to be responsible for facilitating updates. And doing updates to Ning, I don't think it could get simpler. It's a very straightforward process. And all of my experience so far, I've yet to have someone come back and go, and how do I use this? Actually, point them in the right direction, they set up their own account, and they can go right to work at that point. And it's very straightforward, very easy to use. In terms of the tabs across the top, that also is fully customizable. If you're the administrator of the site, that being the person that set it up, you can click on Manage, and you get a slightly more sophisticated board. So as far as tabs, this is very similar to the other interface where you can reorder your tabs. If you want your blog tab to come earlier, you just drag it up. If you want to add a new tab, you can add a new tab and name it. What do you think I should name a new tab? Anyone see anything we should add?
Help. On our Ning site, we added a help section that was tailored just for...
All right, so helps. We could add it as a sub-tab underneath another group if we want to do that. We could point it to a page. We could create a new page. We can make it visible to the public, just members, just administrators. And then you can also change the color format of your tabs. Save the tab settings, and we've added a help tab up at the top. If you want to edit the page and add content, again, just click on it, and you get your basic WYSIWYG editor. The simplicity of how everything is set up is really pretty impressive. So underneath the Manage tab, I could go through quite a bit about it, but don't want to get tied down too many of the details. Just to point out one, analytics, you're able to add in Google Analytics to your page by adding the code here. Slightly technical, but allows you to track and see how many people are actually using your site. Very straightforward. There's no customizing of templates with code and so on. Just get a box, get your code from Google, cut, paste, and you're all set. And again, I'm not a programmer. I really kind of get by on the skill set that I have. I'm more of a designer per se. But I've yet to run into any major hiccups with using Ning. So what I'd like to do is switch back to the presentation, talk about a few other parts. So, from what I'm, question, great.
How easy is it to clone a site? Say you want to set up a bunch of Ning sites, but you want them all to look the same, and you don't want to go through the process of manipulating everything again. Is there a way to do that?
Yes, the Advanced tab, where you can customize the CSS, just cut and paste, copy and paste. And I haven't, again, we're primarily building one Ning site currently, but if we then wanted to roll it out to alumni or wanted to roll it out to accepted students, that would definitely be an area where we'd have to start sorting out how easy is that to do. But I think it's fairly easy. In terms of branding, I like the fact that you could do a different brand for each site instead of having it all look the same. So, okay. I had the small group session for Facebook. How many people were over at that session yesterday? All broke up into small groups. Everyone kind of ran out the door, and everyone came back. And I was in a small group, and one of the topics that came up is if you build a social network, how do you actually get people to come and use it? And I think that's pretty common concern. For ourselves, we had a kind of an in-house debate. A real common strategy is build it, send out an email to everyone and say, hey, come use it, and then sit back and hopefully everyone comes flooding in. Apparently it doesn't work so well. And I read a lot of different articles, and this is kind of a real rudimentary way of describing it. But I don't know if everyone remembers when Gmail first came out, they had this invite-only approach where you had to know someone that had a Gmail account, and they had to invite you. And kind of gave an interesting buzz to Gmail when it first came out. And so after a lot of internal discussion within the IT department and with communications, we've come up with a plan. And our plan is to start with a very small test group. We're going to be rolling it out to our test group later this month. And we're going to start with just 12 people. Just that way, get a little bit of feedback from everyone, and then see what do they like, what do they don't like, what works, what doesn't work. And then once they get comfortable using it, in probably about 2 weeks, we'll ask them to start inviting some of their friends. And the way we have our site, as far as being private, people can invite 100 people, but our communications department, in conjunction with student affairs, they approve who gets access and who doesn't. So it's a very controlled setup. But the big thing here is this idea of trusted relationships. Personally, I use Facebook. Why do I use Facebook? I use it because I get to keep in touch with my friends, family out on the West Coast. I'm from New York. And I use it because I know people who use it. And I think that's a real important idea. People who use your social network if they know other people are using it. And so it's a very deliberate strategy to not do a bulk, here it is, and hopefully everyone comes and uses it. And then as this phase 2 goes on, further along, we're going to get feedback. And I'm sure we're going to have things we're going to need to tweak and customize. But it's going to be a good chance to troubleshoot. And then again, our goal is to go live August 15th. And we may end up doing several iterations where we ask each group to invite a few more people and kind of just gradually go out in concentric circles that are overlapping. And so it's a pretty basic rollout strategy. But I think it's an effective one. Yesterday I was at a workshop about libraries and using Camtasia, and they were talking about how Camtasia has excellent resources online. Ning's resources are, to me, just unparalleled in terms of just how easy they are to use. And there are two main resources that are pretty easy to remember. The first one is help.ning.com. And right up at the top, they take a very Google-esque approach, give you a search box, and just about anything I've typed in, they've come back with not just one article, a number of articles that just break it down and explain how easy adding different parts are. Another site, or the second site that is Ning Developer. This is for the folks that are trying to do slightly more sophisticated things with their Ning site, but they have a whole developer forum that really lets you see everything that the latest developers are doing. Right now they're working on Ning apps, which is on the page as of yesterday. And I think it's a really great setup. I've posted questions to both the help forum and to the developer forum, and within a day I've gotten a response. And beyond using their tools, you could also sign up for a monthly service where you could ask Ning directly, the company ask questions, and they'll get back to you directly. And that's a $10 a month setup. There are a couple other premium features. Up until now, everything's free. There's no cost. Setting up the site, customizing the site, it's all a free setup. For ourselves, if we go back over to Ning, we wanted to not have advertising. So in our right-hand column, by default, there's some Google ads in here. And our Ning site, let me see. Oh, here. Okay, bear with me a moment. Thought I had a tab open with it. Oh, here we go. Our Ning site that we built, have to log in. Again, our walled garden. I'll dig that term. Okay, once I sign in. You can actually even customize the login screen. I didn't do too much with it. Our main site has a very specific brand. Very gold and black, kind of fairly stark. But we like it. We're going to be making changes, but we added some RSS feeds on the bottom. And again, it's very specific brand. Okay. For our Ning site, our communications department wanted to make it different, and wanted to make it different on purpose, so that the students wouldn't feel that it was just an extension of our website. And then in terms of name, I'm a designer, but I'm not necessarily the best way to come up with creative names. I didn't come up with the name. Our communications group did. And I'm going to be curious to see, as we roll it out to each group of students, how they like it. But we wanted to come up with something catchy, so we used this idea of Lex Lounge, and our tagline is Hofstra Law School's exclusive networking site. Kind of makes it sound special. And then we're just slowly building it out right now. You add a welcome message, photos, groups. Our goal is to add a group for each of the departments on campus, and then for each of the student organizations. And the student organizations right now, if they want to update their site, they email me, and my group has to update it. And not the most ideal setup, but that's what we're currently doing with Hannon Hill and our Cascade CMS. But with this, they'll set up a group and they'll have complete access. They can update it at any point they want, and they can invite their friends, people at the school, other students that are in their student organization to be a part of their group. They can send out announcements, and it's all done through Ning, and it's all very straightforward. And then as far as advertising, you notice there isn't any advertisements in this right-hand column. So if we go back over to ning.com, and feedback. I'm blanking out here. There is an area where you can do see what the premium switch gears. Good help. So it'll type in the term and gives a whole example of what you can do with premium services and purchasing premium services. So if you want to actually start paying for stuff, what can you pay for? For example, if you wanted to have your own custom domain, I think if we do end up settling on the name Lex Lounge, we might want to go at lexlounge.com. For $4.95 a month, you can have your own custom domain. If you want to up the storage or bandwidth, it's $9.95 a month. If you go ad-free, we're currently paying $24.95 to not have Google ads. We're very satisfied with that. And then you can also remove a promotional link up at the top. I don't know if we've done that yet or not. And then as I mentioned before, that premium support, they do allow, beginning at $10 a month, they have a whole breakdown of the different types of support that they offer. But up until now, I've, again, just asked a few questions on the forum. I was able to figure out the rest all on my own, and it's been a pretty smooth process. So, if we go back to Keynote.
Tony, is there a per user, like, can you have a limited amount of?
As many email addresses as you can think of, you can invite.
Okay.
So, it's a pretty neat setup. Yes?
Michael, have you worked much with the event calendar yet?
Yes, we've run into a few hiccups with that, to be honest. One of the early on questions was, can a group create an event? So if we have Hofstra Law Review, one of our journals, can they create an event? And the short answer to that is no. A person can create an event, a group cannot. And so it's slightly different from the Facebook model. But in terms of adding events, it's been fairly smooth. We're in the process right now of with Main Campus Web Development doing a great job on setting up web services for R25, which will be our calendaring system, and how are we going to integrate the two. We haven't necessarily sorted that out yet, but what I like about the Ning events is the fact that you can invite people, they could RSVP, you can see who's coming. Even with R25, with all of its sophisticated features, they don't have that. So I have a few ideas of how we're going to make those two play nice together. But we're still sorting that out in-house. So, yes?
The biggest problem I run into with using Ning as an organizational kind, for an organization, we were using it in the law library as sort of our de facto intranet. The problem is managing members. If a member leaves, you can't just cut off their access. Your only option, unless they've changed it, is to ban a member, which then deletes everything they've ever contributed. Have you found that to be a problem, or do you ever found a way around that?
We haven't found a workaround. Our student affairs department is going to oversee who's a member and who isn't, and keep track of that. That's interesting, though.
I mean, like if you're student bar president, graduates, you don't want them to continue to have access to it. There's no way to control that. Either they always have access, or if you delete that member, everything they've ever posted goes away.
Interesting. So how are you addressing that right now?
We went for that purpose. I mean, the library secretary took a new job. You know, everything she'd ever posted goes away. So we're transitioning to another tool. I think we're going to use for that purpose. We're looking at AirSet or Google Docs or something like that, just for that sort of intranet function. But for voluntary groups, I mean, it's designed for that, but it doesn't give you that control as a manager of a group that is sort of tied to an organization. You know, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I know you could set up different categories within it. I always come up with kludgy ideas as far as you could change the email and password on the account.
Have you posted anything on here?
I'm sorry?
Have you posted anything on your
Yes.
number?
Yes.
If you took another job and went to another school, there, you know, either you continue to have access to it or everything you ever posted goes away.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I think with any system, there's definitely going to be hiccups, and I'm going to be curious to look into that when I get back. Yes.
We've run into this problem, and here are two workarounds that we used about banning. We created general email addresses. So, for example, for the folks in our student services, when they post, they don't post as Sheila in student services. They post as student services.
Excellent.
That's
Yes.
the character.
Good idea.
So when Sheila leaves, it's forever. The other thing to be very careful about with banning is the default message from Ning about banning a member is very ugly. It's like, you have been banned forever. It's like, and we've been using it for admitted students. So as admitted students decide to go to other schools, right, we didn't want to be sending them this like, you know, so you
Into the outer darkness.
exactly. So what we did is you can soften the default messages in Ning using the language editor feature in managers. And so we just said, we just changed it to, you know, congratulations on your making your choice. We wish you the best of luck, and we're now restricting your access to our class. But just to be careful to check those default features.
Okay. And actually, we use Drupal for 2 faculty sites, and we're able to do the same thing. We customize the messages. I look forward to setting that up in Ning. That's another good point. Yes, Sid?
Can you bring in any other content or application that maybe you've written on another server and bring it into Ning, or embed something like, let's say there's a company out there that offered like a polling question application that's like something you would embed in your regular website. Did you bring that into Ning, or are you restricted to what Ning has to offer?
I don't have the answer for that, but I'll go to the developer site and ask. But is there a way to do that?
Yes,
With
there
a slightly more advanced Ning user?
No, it's like, I'm loving all this. I wish I had come here before we started and saved myself weeks, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can embed anything via that. You have to know more than I'd be comfortable with. But,
Yeah, and at least in-house ourselves, we're beginning to work on iPhone apps. So as far as how we're going to tie all that in, I think maybe next year at Cali, there'll probably be a lot more chatter about law schools and how they're using iPhone apps. But we use different polling software. Gary, want to jump
We
in
use a
here?
software called, it's a website, Poll Everywhere. It's a website, and we've used it, I actually used it for orientation last year. It actually works pretty well. You can embed it into PowerPoint slides. It's using your text message, if you're using your phone. So you're not using clickers, and you can also do it web-based, but you can use the cell phone. And it's highly recommend doing that for sure.
We used it during student orientation, I believe, to do live feed on the screen, poll the students.
Does it give you the same type of statistics?
Yeah, you see the bar across, so you actually see statistics of what what they're doing.
We use Turning Point,
Right.
web-based version.
Yeah.
I was curious if it's-
And the nice thing about it is that you use, I saw it at Educom last year, and you use your cell phone, so, so even like, let's say theoretically you had a faculty member who banned laptops, used laptops in the classroom, but they had their own laptops, so they didn't want to do survey, they could do the cell phone. So theoretically you could do that. So it's interesting. I've seen the Turning Point, actually we're going to do a demo of it.
Using the web-based.
Yes.
One of the greatest challenges I find right now, is the most exciting part too, is just the fact that there are so many tools we're looking at SharePoint in-house, and a lot of things that can be done with Ning can in many ways be done with SharePoint. And then the U portal, there's ways to go in and customize the heck out of it and do tremendous changes to it. There's actually a way to embed Ning inside U portal. We've looked into that, but as of now, we're not going to be rolling that out as far as I'm aware. But this is a multitude of tools. And I think the slide earlier where, okay, now you must choose. At some point you need to choose and commit to technology and see if it works. That certainly isn't one technology for everyone. There isn't a one size fits all. Any other questions? Okay, just want to thank you for attending the Ning Do It Yourself. If anyone has